Welcome back to the Gruber Morning Show. I'm Pete Gruber, and the image behind me here today is also, of course, AI generated. And I asked for a futuristic newsroom in a high rise with a lot of windows, and this is what it rendered for us. We usually get some pretty cool images. I'm solo here today. My co-host, Mark Schaffner, is still at the Insurance Symposium back east. He'll be back tomorrow and, of course, next week. In the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. Let us know what part of the world you're coming in from. That's always interesting to our viewers. And we've got an interesting set of talking points today.
Repeat, by the way, can you read that?
I can read it, yes.
Okay.
All right. So the first thing I wanted to cover with everyone, if we can throw up an image, Jesse, and this one is called tub battery repair. In the world of EVs, of course, you have a battery in at least most of the EVs that are the floorboard of the car, the Tesla Model S, for example. The Roadster is a bit different. There's a 1,000-pound behemoth that sits behind the seat and occupies where the engine used to be on a Lotus Elise. But in all the later model Teslas, the floorboard is basically the battery, and it's about 1,200 pounds, 7,104 lithium-ion cells. It's a pretty big.
Sorry, say battery
item.
tub?
Battery tub, yeah. By tub, I mean that all the cells sit inside the tub, and then there's a lid on top. And but anyway, what happens occasionally is people hit road hazards. They hit obstructions in the road. And here's a prime example. This is a customer in Mission Viejo, California, that sent us this picture and said, "Can you guys repair this?" It's of course very expensive to replace a battery, so a repair oftentimes makes sense. But what we look for is a number of things. One of them is, what is the extent of the puncture? And this one you can see is pretty big. The next question that we then ask is, what sort of weather conditions were in place at the time this mishap occurred? If it was a rainy day, water on the road, there's a likelihood that water's already gone into the battery pack. All bets are off at that point. It's not worth trying to repair. So the simple ones are the side punctures. Or if it's the insurance companies oftentimes will total these cars if they even have a dent or a ding, because they lean on these, they're cautious, let's put it that way. There was a phrase there I was looking for, and I couldn't quite put it together at that moment. We have a LinkedIn visitor, Ingemar Anderson, author of 2 books so far. He says, hello from wonderful Seattle. Thank you for joining us, Ingemar. So with these battery packs, we do a bit of research before we recommend that they get shipped to us for repair. And sometimes they're just simple repairs, especially if we don't have to pull the pack, we don't have to open it. If it's, for example, a minor puncture on the side of the pack, then just sealing it back up with an industrial epoxy usually suffices. In this particular case, the puncture is fairly large, and the customer began getting errors from the car. And here are some of the errors. There's a high voltage system fault, and it's a long string, but part of that is pack volt mismatch fault. That, of course, indicates that there are some bricks now that are imbalanced, and most likely there's a damaged brick that is misreported or that is reporting a lower voltage than the rest. And then the next error that we got, which is also a battery management system error, is SW back voltage MI or brick voltage MIA, missing in action. So one of the bricks looks like it died. In this particular case, we recommended not having this car shipped to us, because what ends up happening is you've got transport costs to and fro. You then, in this case, we would have to open the battery pack. You would have a module replacement, most likely, since we have a brick that's completely MIA, and then closing it back up. And by the time you get done with all that labor, the expense of a replacement module is just not cost effective. It's more cost effective to replace that battery. So I wanted to show you at least an example of some of the things that we look for. And we definitely look for any kind of opening in the pack, and of course, what kind of weather conditions existed at the time that this occurred. All right, we've got a question from Instagram. Karaid Bushan, he said, can Tesla cars survive Indian climate and road conditions? I don't know what Indian climate is. We'll have to get we'll have to get you to elaborate on that. And then, of course, the road conditions part goes along with that.
Well, Pete,
yeah.
Hold on, let me pull myself up here.
Or maybe it was mistyped.
We're using our AI templates. Let me see if this works real quick.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, you can see me. I did see a video recently where wasn't Tesla out there testing in Saudi Arabia or something like that, doing extreme temperature testing and driving it out there. There was a couple of videos on.
Yeah, we did see something about that, and it's a great idea. Extreme temperature testing flushes out the potential problems that will occur later on with the car.
Yeah. So I think they can handle a lot of crazy conditions, and here we have extreme heat too. You know what I mean? So they're definitely tough cars. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, they could probably do this in Phoenix. In fact, up north, we have a GM proving grounds that I'm sure that this area was selected for that reason. So we have an update for you on the 3 barn find roadsters. And I know this has been going on for a couple, 3 months now. And the latest update, I spoke to the sellers this morning. There was some opinions beginning to swirl again about the disposition of the cars and what's going on with them. And so we went right to the source, talked to the sellers, and also talked to one of the bidders. So the 3 cars are currently still at the dock in China. They were supposed to have been en route to Dubai. There were some complications, which I understand are now resolved, and they're being prepped now to come to the USA instead of going to Dubai. So that's a change. That's a new angle. The reason for Dubai was it's a free zone, and it would have been easier for people to go and see the cars, and we also had some bidders that were in that area. So at that time, it made sense. So the cars are going to come here to the United States. The sellers have again gone back to plan A, which is bring them to the U.S., Long Beach, have them rail transported here to Phoenix, Arizona. We will then disposition the cars. We will take quality pictures of the cars after cleaning them up. We will certify the cars. We will wake them up, and you can do that with a Tesla Roadster even if the battery has been dead for over a decade. We will confirm odometer readings. We will run log files. We'll establish battery condition. And from the timelines that we get out of the log files, we'll be able to extrapolate precisely when they were bricked and what the condition or state of the batteries are. And of course, provide a detailed condition report. And anyone wishing now to see the cars would do what they've been doing all along now, is coming to our service center, even flying there to see cars that we have for sale there. So that's good news. We'll get some control of these cars, and we'll be able to provide a whole lot more quality pictures and disposition of the vehicles.
Be some good content for us.
It will be. And of course, everybody's going to ask, well, how soon? How soon? Well, you know, there are twists and turns when you're trying to do something this complicated, getting them out of China, bringing them here, and then you have the logistics issue, and you have the, putting them on a rail to come here in the sea containers. But it's all in process, and it is, coming to some fruition at this point. We've updated the listing on our website, so anyone curious about what the current condition is or the current situation can go there, and we'll continue to update the listing as we get new information about these cars. And as always, they are still accepting bids, so if any of you are interested in those cars, you can continue to bid on them. Now, the $2 million bid. This was an unusual bidding process because we went up to $800,000 and then suddenly jumped to $2 million. Well, bidding doesn't normally go that way. We understand that. And we vetted this bidder and said, why are you doing this? And it turns out that it is a rental company that is looking to purchase these vehicles, and they're willing to pay $2 million for them. They will have funding in the middle of August or around that time frame. So the sellers are reserving the option to sell them before then. But the primary reason that this rental company wants these vehicles is it's a startup. They need the visibility, and they feel that the visibility and advertising value from these world famous cars, now world famous, will help them launch their business. And for me is I was hoping that these cars would go in a collection, preferably the Tesla Gigafactories, one in each front lobby of each of the Gigafactories, or at least 3 of them, and never get driven or put on the road. With this rental company, they will be made operational. They will get R80 battery packs, and they will be driven and leased out. So, looks like they will be on the road.
Now, Pete.
Yeah.
I think that what we can do is maybe try and talk this rental car company into making the lease price so high that nobody actually wants to lease them.
That's a great idea.
But hey, at least they are still staying together. You did want that as well.
Yeah, that was the other, or at least go to the same company like Tesla. If you think about it, it makes perfect sense. The Tesla Roadster is Tesla's first car. It's the one that they went through hell with, trying to stay afloat, stay solvent. And a lot of early adopters, it wasn't just Tesla that hung in there. It was a bunch of early adopters that took a chance on a company on the verge of bankruptcy and plopped down $100K or whatever the down payment was for those cars. So there's a community there, and of course Tesla, that would love to see these cars on display, so that people coming to the factories would be able to see the history of Tesla. All right, we've got a bunch of questions coming in. Niles, thank you for joining us. He says good morning. He's in Denmark. TikTok Panopticon says, would you be soon installing nickel iron phosphate batteries as replacements instead of the lithium ion, is what you're assuming, or is what you're asking? We do not, being in the service business, is redesign the vehicles that come in. And I would love to get involved in R&D and convert a Roadster, for example, to lithium iron phosphate or some other technology. But it requires an enormous investment in time, energy, software development, engineering time, research and development. A service organization like us just doesn't have the bandwidth to do that. So we're going to leave it to the aftermarket and OEMs to change the battery chemistry. And later on in the program, we'll be talking about some different battery chemistries that are beginning to, again, percolate. And we all knew that the whole EV battery thing was going to be a rapidly changing landscape. Looks like we're getting a thumbs up from Instagram. Shaker, yours up. Okay, thank you. Another news item, and this is from an Inside EVs article, and the headline says, the 3 companies holding 3/4 of the entire battery electric vehicle market in the U.S. will now use the NACS instead of CCS standard. It's probably game over. And another headline says, in 2 weeks, Tesla, Ford, and GM may have killed the CCS charging standard. And of course, Sandy's latest video where he and Corey are standing there holding a CCS cable and struggling and grunting and complaining about potential hernias, they also helped kill the standard, it looks like.
Well, the thing that I'm interested in is I think that this CCS charger is actually much more prevalent in Europe. So it's like their main charging system over there. So it'll be interesting to see. And then as we recorded yesterday, we were working on our own script for video on this. And, there was a piece in there that we researched about regulatory bodies wanting control of this, right? So You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's of course it happens with any kind of a standard. Eventually, the regulations get involved, and what I'd like to see is rapid adoption rather than months or years of research and further development for something that has been in use and makes a lot of sense. So I'm hoping that the regulators aren't too aggressive with this and that they bless this thing quickly. We definitely needed a charging standard for some time in the United States. It looks like YouTube FS says hello from Germany. Well, thank you for joining us. All right, so we were talking about actually Toyota yesterday as well, and it's also in the video. But there's an announcement. Apparently, Toyota's announcement is that they will be adopting the Giga casting system for the upcoming electric vehicles. Now, notice plural vehicles. This is a good sign. Looks like they're finally coming around to the fact that the world is converting to EVs and that one of the largest car producers in the world should really join that adoption. So, what they're saying is they will be using the same Giga casting system for upcoming vehicles like Tesla does, and they intend to produce the car bodies from three main components in a modular structure, allowing for significant component integration. Now, let's talk about that for a moment. What I have here is something my wife bought me, and it is a Tesla Roadster Hot Wheels car. Legend has it that Elon, who also has kids, by the way, that like this sort of thing, at one point looked at one of their toys and said, why is this type of casting only available in small versions? Why can't you scale this and do it, on a large scale? Well, it turns out he was right. And they went to an Italian company, IDRA, and they bought some Giga casting machines for the Cybertruck, for example. And these things are the size of houses. They're that big. And the fundamental principle is rather than machine a bunch of components and then bolt them together to make a frame, to make a car body, what this gigacasting is able to do is by injecting molten aluminum into dies and molds is make something large like an entire chassis for a car or the entire frame, which of course saves enormous amounts of labor, production time, speeds things up tremendously. There's some great statistics that show what the advantages of this are. Now, they go on in this article and they say that the Giga casting was pioneered by Tesla with a Model Y crossover. It involves the use of a house-sized machine able to produce aluminum parts that are significantly bigger than anything traditionally used in auto manufacturing. And of course, with a system like this in place, a product like a Model Y's rear underbody could be made in one piece instead of dozens of pieces. So they also feel that this change or this adoption that Tesla made with Giga casting has likely helped them to achieve industry-leading profitability. Now, there's an interesting term. The auto manufacturers have struggled for profitability well into the last century, actually. So anything that will improve profitability in auto manufacturing is definitely welcome news. Okay. Yeah, Jesse.
We can show the video, I think, if you want to. Now, this is just a drone video, though.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Flying through, the flying through Tesla factory one.
Sure. And while Jesse's pulling that up, we'll throw up another picture here shortly about a very innovative Tesla owner that decided to make a solar trailer to tow behind his Tesla to charge the car while he's driving. And it's pretty innovative. Of course, it's not going to be commercially viable, but it's kind of interesting how backyard mechanics can innovate like this and create something. There we go.
So now throughout this, I would assume they're going to show the some of that, the GigaPress and all that stuff. So, man, the drone work on this is pretty crazy, though.
Yeah, this is what inspired our drone through our service center.
Yeah, I think we still have that as our main video when you land on our channel.
On YouTube, yes. Yeah, there we go.
Yep.
Now here we're stamping. So this is aluminum sheets that are being stamped into a particular form. That is just amazing.
And in a few years, we'll see, I'm sure if they do another one of these, we'll see a bunch of Tesla robots roaming around in here.
Is this Giga Berlin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And there are a few humans involved in this yet. We have to add that.
Not obsolete quite yet.
No.
Almost, though. I think also for the audience, there's a video out there on Sandy's channel where he talks a lot about the
Giga casting.
The Giga castings. Yep.
Yeah.
A couple of them actually. Now, this one's cool with all those arms.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that drone footage is spectacular. You know, these drones are getting so small. The one that was buzzing around our service center was probably no bigger than a book.
Yeah, a little tiny one, and
yeah,
he could really whip it around, move it, and he was flying it. If people go watch that, he was flying it through the empty cavities on some of the cars.
On the cars, and yeah, the way he did this was he had VR goggles. In fact, he gave me one as well, so we were both seeing exactly what the drone was seeing, and that was how he was guiding this through the various layers of our service center.
Yeah, I think this is early on here for Giga Berlin, but now, I'm sure there's much more going on there. I think they're up to 5,000 vehicles a week, something like that.
Yeah, and the goal is 10,000, so they're continuously increasing, and they seem to be pleased with their progress that they're making.
Yep, so I think that's about the end.
Thank you, Jesse. So I've got another image I want to pop up there. It's the one called Charge While Driving. So what this owner did was, he did basically what the T0 was doing back in the day in 1997, which is pulling a charging method behind him. And you can see there's a commercial trailer there with some solar panels. And it doesn't go into any extensive description of this as to whether these solar panels are able to keep the car functioning or just charging the battery while he's driving. It doesn't look like enough surface area to propel the car. There's an interesting question for those of you that are engineers out there. How many solar panels would it take to provide enough kW to power a Tesla Model S? Without having to, or without draining the battery. All right, so let's see what else we've got here. We've got a Xpeng announced yesterday that it has received 25,000 pre-orders for their G6 electric SUV. We've got a picture there, Jesse, if we can throw that up. It's that orange picture of the picture of the orange car.
Okay.
And what was amazing about this article is they received these 25,000 pre-orders for this electric SUV within 72 hours. The rate of adoption for electric vehicles, again, is unprecedented with anything that we've seen in this century at least, or possibly even the last century. And again, as we point out regularly, we do not believe that any of the people that are in the EV space manufacturing electric vehicles were expecting this kind of rapid adoption and this kind of demand for this product. It would not have been as hard for Tesla to survive during the lean years if they had projections like this showing what the future rate of adoption would be. That business plan would easily have got them all the funding that they needed. But yeah, 72 hours, folks. Don't even know what this G6 is. It says that it's a startup vehicle for them. It's Xpeng is one of the EV manufacturers there. And the price, by the way, is also interesting. It's at the $30,000, just on the cusp, $31,480. And expected delivery starting July of this year. So it looks like we're getting some EVs that are getting down near the $30,000 range in the US, or will be imported or exported to the US. All right. Got some news about the Tesla Semi. The Tesla Semi production was slated to begin in 2023, and they had expected to build 50,000 of these. I'm sorry, that's 2024. Okay. They were ramping up this year. That's right. And in 2024, they're going to go to 50,000, but there's some delays, according to what Elon said at a conference in Austin a couple of days ago. And he said that production would not begin until the end of 2024. So that kind of deviates from that 50,000 that they had projected to be built in 2024. People are anxiously waiting for that car, along with that Tesla Roadster. And we've got another car here that may be putting some pressure on Tesla, but let's take care of a couple of questions first then. Instagram, Juniper Salt says, 20 kW is about 2,000 square feet of panels. Okay, thank you for that. That's about the size of the average home in the U.S., about 2,000 square feet. So if you can picture the footprint of a home, that's how many solar panels you'd need for 20 kW. Of course, you wouldn't be able to pull that behind your Tesla Model S. Got a TikTok question. BizBub_89 says, what battery management system do you recommend using for Model S modules? Well, the Model S modules come with a BMS board on each module. And we repair those. They're pretty efficient, actually. And one of the segments here where we might as well go into that, Sandy Monroe's team did a teardown on the Lucid battery pack. And one of the takeaways was that the battery management boards were typically much larger than the other manufacturers. And they cited Tesla and Rivian. Let me see if I can find that for you. Here we go. Yeah, so they say that the battery management system, the BMS, which is brains in simple terms, is integrated into printed circuit board. And as per their engineers, it was the largest they had ever seen. The Lucid Air's battery had not one, but two such brains, two BMS circuit boards with an unusually large footprint. A Tesla BMS board, by comparison, was much smaller. We don't know yet why. Perhaps they were cramming more components on that. Perhaps their design is not quite as elegant as Tesla's, where they were able to condense. But that was one of the takeaways from this Lucid Air teardown. And some of the other things that they noticed. The typical range of a Lucid is around 384 to 516 miles, depending on the variant. The teardown that they did was with the Air, and it has 18 modules per battery pack, compared to an 85 Tesla Model S pack, which has 16. They said that the Air Grand Touring has 22 modules per battery unit. And then the absence of those 4 modules in the Air Touring, of course, makes up the difference. They're mounted under the rear floor. They help with footwell space inside for rear occupants. So the lower trim, they say, gets a 92 kW per hour battery pack, while the Grand Touring gets 112 kWh. Tesla's largest at this point is 100 kWh. So they disassembled this, and they said it might sound like a science class, but it is educational how technologically advanced the Lucid Air battery is. Now, they didn't go into great detail as to why they felt it was more technologically advanced, but they did have some other takeaways regarding the bus bars. And They said that one of the bus bars is very large. It's a solid metal bar, and this is what carries the current between modules. Due to the aluminum casting in the corner that separates the battery into two parts, Lucid had to use a larger central bus bar, which can drive up costs and use a lot of space. They suggested that smaller U-shaped bus bars would be more practical. Now remember, Sandy's team, this isn't the first time that they've made recommendations, and at times the auto manufacturers perk up and listen. In fact, Elon, in one of his posts, mentioned how the Munro team provided them some lessons on a design in one of their vehicles. All right, they said that the modules are mounted on an epoxy glass fiber composite floor. This is a material that reportedly provides great thermal insulation and corrosion resistance. For structural purposes, the floor was machined aluminum castings at the front, rear, and sides, and another aluminum casting divides the battery at the center into two sections. You know, me describing this probably doesn't give you the full visuals. I would suggest going to see the Sandy Munro YouTube site and watching this video if you're interested. These are always fascinating teardowns. All right, looks like we've got another question here from TikTok. BizBub_89 says, yes, the Rimac Nevera is going to wipe the floor with the Roadster until Elon adds SpaceX boosters. All right, well, let's talk about the Rimac Nevera. I've got a portion on that in this podcast, and I can give you some data. Here we go. So, Rimac Automobilia has delivered the first Nevera electric vehicle hypercar in the United States through a New York-based dealer in Manhattan. The Rimac team was there to watch this groundbreaking initial delivery of the Nevera, which is one of the fastest top speed. Watch what the top speed on this car is. But before I go there, it is limited to just 150 units. That's all they're going to build. So for those of you lining up, get in there early if you want one of those 150.
Hey, Pete?
Yeah.
Real quick, can you take that sentence one more time? The mic mute thing happened.
Oh, okay. So these are limited to just 150 planned units. So again, for those of you interested in getting one of these collectible cars, you probably should line up quickly here. The Nevera is built by Rimac in Croatia at the Bugatti-Rimac headquarters, and it features a 120 kWh battery and 300 miles of range for those of you that are not focused on this vehicle. I don't know what they mean by that. Never mind that. All right. So then they say that this Nevera was actually driven on the streets of Monaco, and a Formula One driver, Nico Rosberg, drove this thing there, and apparently he was pretty impressed with it. It was one of the most, and this is one of the most famous racing locations, of course. So the top speed of this Rimac Nevera is 256 miles per hour. Now we're into Bugatti territory. A friend of mine here in town actually flew all the way to Europe, went on a 5-mile test track, and joined the 250-mile-an-hour club with his Bugatti Veyron. These are incredibly fast cars. Now, the 0 to 60 is 1.74 seconds, which, of course, caught the attention of Elon Musk, who said that the next generation Roadster will be faster and better. So the challenge has been met, and we'll see what Tesla can come up with to beat this new record or this new specification.
Pete?
Yeah.
Do you remember not too long ago when we were talking about if these cars go any faster, it's going to just destroy tires and do all this kind of stuff? How do you think they keep figuring out these engineering feats?
Well, the tires are specially designed. The amount of force, centrifugal force, will literally blow a standard tire apart. Mm-hmm. So generally, these kind of manufacturers spend a lot of time designing special things like tires, with the tire companies for these cars, and they're extremely expensive.
So you can't just go down to Discount
No,
Tire and
this is not going to be a quick discount tire replacement for these cars. The second thing that they have to work on is aerodynamics. My ACR 2008 ACR Dodge Viper, for example, had little dive planes on the front of the car, a gigantic 5-foot wing on the back, which provided 1,000 pounds of downforce at 150 miles an hour to keep those sticky PS2 tires in the rear, 33 centimeter, by the way, really wide tires, planted on the ground, especially during tracking when you're constantly, shifting and going around corners. So, yeah, they have to spend a lot of time with the aerodynamics and, of course, tires in order to make these cars safe at those types of speeds.
yeah.
And then the final thing to be said is, we used to go on supercar runs. Rob, the guy with the Bugatti Veyron, my Viper, and a bunch of Ferraris and Lamborghinis. Nobody ever can go to those speeds. It's just, the roads aren't built for it. If you're in traffic, you certainly don't want to be doing a buck something, with people doing 50 or 60 or 70. So it's these are basically collector cars. And
We're gonna have to start giving people that astronaut G-force training to even drive these things.
well, yeah, that's the other thing. We talk about that often. As the 0 to 60s continue to go down lower and lower, some people can't handle the G's. They start to get dizzy. They black out. We had one girl, one of the admin people at the old GMC facility, that went on a ride with a Tesla Model S Plaid at the time, and she was sick to her stomach after that launch. So yeah, there's a price to be paid.
I got sick riding in the back of that Lucid that came in, and it wasn't even a Sapphire. It was just a regular one.
Is that right? Yeah. Yeah, being in the back makes it a little bit tougher too. So yeah, the Rimac Navara, thank you for pointing that out, and we'll see. And then, of course, like he points out, until Elon adds SpaceX boosters, that'll be an interesting experience as well. All right. Question, TikTok, user 4535414. Any suggestions on the U029 era, charging limited, or a replacing battery pack? This is a hot topic. It is all over social media, and the fundamental reason is when it happens to an out-of-warranty car, Tesla, it's an expensive proposition because no longer can you drive down to your local service center and get a free $22,000 battery. You now have to foot the bill for that. And again, putting this in perspective, not all Teslas have this problem, but the ones that do are the ones making the news. They're aberrations. They're not. It is not a common error that occurs, but the ones that do are definitely in the limelight. There is a repair for that. And we're one of the companies that can repair that type of error. Those types of errors typically indicate a brick mismatch, which could be the result of a resistive cell. And that's something that we do very well. We're able to hone in on where that cell is, who's causing that problem, and neutralizing it, taking it out of circuit, and the cars continue to run and function. In the Roadster world, we probably do one of those a week these days. So there is a fix for it. The problem is we accept all Tesla Roadsters, but we've got a backlog on the other platforms, the Model S especially. So it would be months before we can get to a project like that. But there is a fix. That's the good news. And of course, you always have the option to swap it out with Tesla. And they have two options. They have their refurbished battery packs, and they have the brand new battery packs. Price is around $14,000 for the refurb, and about $20,000 to $22,000 for the brand new battery pack. Instagram, Juniper Salt is asking, hey, I asked before about this. Is the top speed actually limited because it would seem an electric motor can spin much faster? As you are saying about the tires, the limit must be the engineering. Well, the first problem with an electric vehicle's top speed is there's no transmission, there are no gears, there's no shifting, there's there's no exchange in gears. So you're basically limited by the RPMs that the motor can handle. Now, what Tesla had done, the Tesla Roadster, for example, top speed is not impressive. It's about 130. Then with the Plaid, they got it up much higher than that because they went to a different motor design. Rather than having a lot of metal spinning at 14,000 plus RPMs, which essentially could start a explosion of metal because of the centrifugal force, they went to lighter materials. They began to incorporate carbon fiber in those motors. They lightened the armatures. So the speed is limited in an EV until they can find something that can handle the torque and start putting transmissions into EVs. And now it really gets interesting because with the amount of torque and power available in an EV, with a transmission, your top speeds now would begin to increase. Can we get above 250? Well, that's a good question. Do we want to? That's another good question. Instagram, AJR_16 says, love the Roadster. I agree with you. Both the Legacy Roadster and that new Roadster are going to be some interesting vehicles on the road. By the way, speaking of Roadsters, we set a record yesterday. When I first got in the morning, we have our Tesla Roadster podcast at 10 o'clock. And a Roadster owner in Warwick, New York, sent us his submission form. He wants to sell his electric blue Roadster, Sport Roadster. So I quickly threw together the listing and was amazed that I was able to get it done in time and still come to the podcast. And what we typically do when we put a Tesla Roadster, Legacy Tesla Roadster up on our listing, we have about 400 pre-qualified Roadster buyers that we send that information to first, giving them a chance to look at the car before we advertise on social media 24 hours later. So there's an advantage to being one of the pre-qualified Roadster buyers. And by the way, if you want to join that, on our website, under Roadsters for Sale, there's a button that says Join the Pre-Qualified Buyer List. And we'll send you any new cars that come available before they get advertised. So anyway, I'm in the podcast. It lasts about an hour and a half. I go back upstairs, and the car's already sold. It was that fast, and it was a sweet car. It was
probably one of the fastest ones we've ever had.
I think that was the fastest, actually. Yeah. 4,800 miles on this electric blue Roadster. Something that the seller missed that one of our customers actually picked up later, it had the executive leather option, which is an upgrade to the interior. Low mileage, it had a rebuilt battery pack, not the new R80 pack, but it had a replacement battery pack at some point, which is the reason it had such a great calculated amp hour capacity and charged up to into the high 170s, I think, for the top range charge or charge range. So this thing sold quickly. And for those of you interested in Roadsters, by the way, there are a couple places on our website where you can get your Roadster fix. One of them is take a look at the Roadsters for Sale, then take a look at the Roadsters that have already sold, because down below the Roadsters for Sale, there are over 30 of them on our site. There are another 50 plus that have already sold, and the whole story is there. So you can see pictures of the car inside, outside, all of that, and the backstory on the car, which is often interesting as well. The second place on our website, if you're into Roadsters, and we're talking about Legacy Roadsters, by the way, no new ones have been sold yet, we have a gallery portion where, again, there's an interesting story about an owner's car and lots of great pictures. All right, bunch of questions coming in. TikTok user is his name. He says all cell voltages were the same millivolt difference. When under large load, max voltage offset was 490 millivolts. So during the diagnostic reading, all the brick voltages were the same, or very little difference between them. But then under large load, the difference was 490 millivolts. It sounds to me like either a loose connection or a defective brick or some batteries in a brick. And this is the type of thing that we began to see in the Tesla Roadsters, by the way, with a replacement pack that Tesla came out with in 2016. The cells used were different than the Panasonic cells, and the problem was that after 7 years in use, these packs began to lose power. They were going high impedance, and this is the type of symptom that we were seeing. Was there was they weren't able to put out the voltage that the other legacy pack cells were able to deliver and the amperage.
Okay, Pete, so you got one from TikTok and then this YouTube one. I don't know you need to get too deep into it if you want to read it, but it will lead us into our topic because I made the Manhattan Project our thumbnail. I think that's why this comment came in.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. All right. TikTok, Biagio asks, is it worth turning on the 4 speakers that are disabled in the rear-wheel drive Model 3? You know, I don't own a Model 3, and I'm not familiar with the audio quality in a 3. I think we'd have to get some of our owners involved in this. And if anybody's watching, maybe you guys can answer Biagio's question. Is it worth turning on those disabled 4 speakers in a Model 3? Then we've got YouTube. Ask other universe aliens to kill devils is his name. He says, most obesities in the USA are because people have forgotten the victims of nuclear war.
Yeah, I think there's a little language barrier there.
Okay. What he's referring to, and you're right, let's go to this first news item that we skipped over earlier. Oak Ridge National Lab, ORNL, is a secretive lab in Tennessee, Oak Ridge, Tennessee, that was involved during World War II in what was called the Manhattan Project. The Manhattan Project was a full-scale research and development lab designed to develop the U.S.'s first nuclear bomb capability so that they could shorten World War II. That was the objective anyway. Well, this lab is still very much in operation. They're not developing nuclear products anymore that we're aware of anyway, but they apparently have developed a new pressing method. And there's a picture here, Jesse. If we can bring up the one called electrolyte. They are working on a solid electrolyte or a solid-state EV battery that replaces the flammable liquid electrolyte in current EV type batteries. So it's able to move ions between electrodes through this solid electric rather than this liquid electric. The electrolyte is made, or it's a film actually, that is made from antiperovskite. I'll spell it for you. ANTIPEROVSKITE. And it's a promising class of new solid electrolytes because of their low inherent temperature processability and high ionic conductivities. We keep talking about this. Batteries are going to improve. There's so much demand for a better battery technology, and the absurdity of carrying 1,200 pounds of DC storage around with you in a vehicle will eventually become obsolete, and we'll be able to reduce that weight enormously. So apparently this lab in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, is now working on this solid electrolyte, and we're looking for great things to come from this effort. And hopefully it will go into application quickly. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's just another example. It seems like every other week there's some new crazy battery technology coming out. Whether it's advancements of current technology or ways, like I just saw the other day too. That person Teague Egan that we interviewed a long time ago, a couple of years ago on the first iteration of the podcast, they just got I think $50 million or some
outlandish sum.
Some crazy amount of money from one of these big auto manufacturers because of their lithium refining technology. They have this certain kind of membrane that allows for much more efficient extraction from
Oh,
brines.
yes. Okay. There was a 60 Minutes program on that a month or so ago
Hmm.
that in the Salton Sea in California, they were applying this membrane
Hmm.
to the slurry that they were capturing for thermal energy creation. Hot slurry basically coming from miles down in the earth. And rather than pump the stuff back down, they were starting to retrieve high concentrations of lithium. So it was serving a dual purpose, creating energy and also mining lithium in a completely new way.
Whole new method. And then we
Yeah.
have the Amprius, and then we have Toyota announcing their solid state, and it just goes on and on and on. The list goes on.
Sodium battery,
Sodium
the
batteries.
graphene battery. Yeah.
Y-
Uh,
Yep.
it's an exciting time, folks. And yeah, we expect this kind of rapid change in technology. But anyway, getting back to the question that was posted, um, he says he needs to apologize and use thoughts to retrieve the nuclear bombs. I think there's a language issue there. But he does tell us that the Manhattan Project produced two different types of atomic bombs. They were codenamed Fat Man and Little Boy. And of course, those were deployed in Japan, Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Instagram. Zaban Fani says, hey, what's up? All right, so let's see what other kind of news items we have here. And in the meantime, bring us your questions and we'll see if we can answer them. Here's a good one. What is the cost to charge an EV in KWH? All right. We did this yesterday, but it's worth doing again for the broader EV audience here. So they're saying that a conservative rule of thumb is that an electric vehicle gets about 3 to 4 miles per kilowatt hour. A kilowatt hour is what your toaster consumes, for example, to make your bagels. So divide that. Divide the total miles that you drive each month by 3 or 4 to get the kWh that you would use monthly. And then multiply that number times your cost per kilowatt hour. Now, I did some research yesterday, and I was surprised. In Arizona, we have two utilities, Arizona Public Service and Salt River Project, and they used to charge around 8 to 9 cents per kilowatt hour. I needed an updated version of that. Turns out that we're now to 13, 14 cents per kilowatt hour. So that's the basis that I use to come up with the math to show what I use every month driving an EV. So what they say is, to put this in perspective, they give an example. Let's say that you drive 1,058 miles per month. And where they get that from is the average American drives about 12,700 miles annually. So about 1,000 miles a month. All right. For an EV, you will use about 353 kWh in that time frame, in that year. In the U.S., the household average from April to 2023 is about 15.47 cents per kilowatt hour. So charging an electric car at home would cost you about $55 per month for that average use EV. Now, at that point, Jesse chimed in and he said, I was just at the gas station this morning. And what happened, Jesse?
Yeah, I was at the gas station a couple days ago, and it was, I think, $4.85 roughly here in Phoenix is about the average at the Circle K. And for my SUV, which is a 4-cylinder, so it gets okay gas mileage, but it cost me $80 to fill up every time, and that's at least once a week.
Okay, versus $55 per month for an EV.
Yeah.
So that's a strong, again, argument for moving into electric vehicles. I know when Richard got or stopped driving that big Dodge truck that he had, and he went to one of our loaner Tesla Model S's,
Yeah.
it opened up a whole new world for him.
His was actually a Ford, I think a 1992 or 93 Ford, and it got less than 10 miles to the gallon or something crazy like that. It had a big tank,
Yeah.
but it was over $100 to fill it up, and then he had to fill it up once or twice a week.
Yeah, those Warren engines, old engines, Warren rings, yeah, it would start to eat some gas. All right, we've got an Instagram comment from Berm Spots. He says, what are the national stats on electric cars? People like the idea, Also, what are the limitations of battery-powered VTOLs currently? You know that mini one, that one-person drone like Jetson's Arrow. Look them up. Actually, Jesse did. He showed me one. Tell
Yeah,
me
that was
about it.
the hold on, let me put my
The VTOL, yeah, vertical
yeah,
takeoff and landing.
this was on Supercar Blondie's page for anybody that wants to go check it out. I don't know if it's that specific brand. I forget the brand, but it is. It's a one-person drone, and they were testing it out over a field, and they were going pretty high, which seemed kind of crazy. But it has a bunch of little drone fans that power
Yeah.
this one-person VTOL. And then also, if you want some more detailed of the more larger, more commercial ones, you can check Sandy. He is super into all the VTOL stuff. He really loves that tech. So I'll see if I can find a video to pull up here for the Supercar Blondie one.
What was amazing about that video that you showed me is typically the ones I've seen are over softer surfaces instead of terra firma, ground. They usually do it over water, so in case you crash, you may live, right? Depending on the height, of course. But so the question was, what are the national stats on electric cars? Well, if it's adoption, it's almost exponential at this point. It's continuing. The EV manufacturers can't seem to keep up with the demand. Tesla is building more factories, more are planned. There doesn't seem to be any end in sight as far as adoption. Do people like the idea? There are people that are still dead set on ICE vehicles. And we're actually talking about getting one of them on our podcast, because what we'd like to do is get a pro-ICE vehicle type influencer and someone like us that is into electric vehicles and just share some ideas, or put on some boxing gloves, whatever comes first. But it'll be interesting, I think. People are warming up to the idea. The manufacturers are taking away all the excuses. The prices keep coming down. The excuse of, well, I'm going to get range anxiety. There aren't enough chargers. There's not enough infrastructure. There's not enough standardization. All those excuses are being annihilated one right after the other. There are, and I don't know if the statistic or what the stats are, but it's going to be interesting to see how many charging stations there are in the United States compared to gasoline stations at this point. And once that crosses over, of course, that excuse is completely gone. And now with standardization, every charging station is going to look the same. It's, just like every gas station looks the same. It's the same size nozzle for diesel or for standard gasoline.
Yep, and one other thing to consider too, Pete, is I think the Roadster came out in 2008, right? And that was the first car, even though that was a very limited run, 2,000 or 2,400 cars. So we're, 15 years in? I wonder where we were from 1900 to 1915, right, in terms of the gas car revolution. I think EVs are moving much, 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 much faster in terms of charging availability, different brand adoption, all this kind of incentives by the government and everywhere else. It's much quicker, the rate of adoption. It's exponential, like you said.
That would be a great video. What was different about the first generation EVs? Of course, the Bendix starter killed that. We went from cranking to actually being able to push a button or turn a key in a car to start the car. But what was different back then than now? And I think that'd be a great research project for one of our videos. By the way, there's a picture, if you can pop it up, Jesse. It's called Bugatti RV. And this one blew my mind. This is a concept vehicle, of course. It's not in production yet. But if we can pop this up, it's inspiring. This is a blending of Bugatti styling and a recreational vehicle. Now, how many retired people would enjoy driving around in something like this? I know I would. This is a pretty cool concept vehicle. Maybe this will go into production.
It almost looks like an AI image, but it's really well done.
Yeah. All right.
So I have that video real quick.
Sure.
Let me pull that up 1 second for the VTOL.
And after that, by the way, I forgot I had a picture of this new Rimac, and
okay,
the styling on that is compelling. Yeah, there we go.
So this is actually a different brand. It's called Lift Aircraft, I think.
Look at all those little motors. Every single one of them probably has a battery pack hanging below it. And I think that your fail-safe would be the motors are completely separately wired. So there's no one main failure that could kill all of them. Question then becomes, if you lose one of those motors or propellers, will the craft still be stable? And if they have good sensing equipment, that's probably the case.
Yep. Okay, and what was the image you wanted?
Yeah, the Rimac image.
Oh, Rimac, that's right.
Yeah. You know, when the new Tesla Roadster first came out, what I was expecting, because there was some a discussion prior to the release of the actual prototype vehicle, there was an expectation that was set by those of us out here in the exotic car community. This would be wedge-shaped. It would have wings on it. It would have holes through it. It would have scoops. It would look like a Lamborghini on steroids. And what we ended up getting was basically a scaled-down Model S in terms of styling. The Rimac seems to have blended those two, which is the Tesla Roadster and a Lamborghini. And you can see it's got some pretty cool styling cues, and it looks like a hypercar or a supercar. Got an Instagram question from Berm Spots again. He says, thoughts on grid draw of superchargers. Problem spot for EV-powered semi-trucks. Okay, we've got a video on YouTube where we did lots of research, and at that point in time, this was about 6 months ago or so, we were pleasantly surprised that the grid expansion, in the United States at least, is keeping up with the charger and the demands from EVs. And I think that that was global, if I recall correctly. I'd have to watch that video again. But fortunately, it looks like the grid expansion is keeping up with the demand on the demand for the grid.
Yeah, the video is out there. It's probably a year old at this point, but we did a good amount of research, and we actually used one of Engineering Explains videos to help us with all that. And yeah, it's still very relevant.
So there's talk about Rivian, and it's losing its position on the NASDAQ 100 index. And the questions are, well, will it still be publicly traded? What'll happen to my shares and stock? They are losing their position on the NASDAQ 100, but not on the NASDAQ exchange. They're being replaced by a company called ON Semiconductor, ON, and so they will still be publicly traded. In fact, during the announcement, there was actually a 9% increase in the Rivian stock value. This was a few days ago, actually. I don't know where they're at today. Maybe some of you can chime in. But it doesn't look like it's going to have a severe negative impact, which might be expected if they were completely delisted, which is not the case. But the CEO, RJ Scaringe, I hope you pronounce it that way, he emphasized that driving profitability is now just as crucial as ramping up production. And Rivian has a pretty cool product. You see them out there on the roads. So we hope they make it. We hope they survive. And it would be nice having them expand and go into SUVs as well. Or they're already in SUVs, aren't they? Yeah.
For Rivian, yeah, the R1S, I think.
Exactly, yes. Okay. Instagram, Chenkster says, what is your take on Mullen Automotive? Don't know.
Yeah, that's another one we're going to have to research.
We'll have to research, yeah. Okay. And this is usually where Mark chimes in, and, we tag team each other. So if you see any moments of silence here, it's because I'm scrambling to find the next news item.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, by the way, I'm sure we have I think there might be another image or two, but I think we're at an hour and 10 almost.
Okay. Blink Charging, one of the nation's largest charging networks, is developing a fast EV charging station that supports the Tesla NAC S port. known as the North American Charging Standard, of course. It will also have the other port, which is the Combined Charging System, or the CCS. So you'll be able to get both with the Blink charging stations, at least for now. And this announcement from Blink came shortly after the GM and Ford announcement that they are planning to switch from CCS to NACS. And of course, now Ford and GM will have 12,000 eventually Tesla superchargers in 2024 available to them with an adapter, and the new vehicles will start getting the NACS socket on the cars. Very good news, this whole charging standard adoption.
And Pete, I'm sure we're going to see other companies start building specifically for the NACS as well. So
Yeah,
who knows, by 2024, 2025, there'll be more than 12,000, a lot more, hopefully.
Oh yeah, I mean the onus is no longer on Tesla or only Tesla to build charging or superchargers. These other manufacturers now will be highly motivated to service their EV base. And of course, like Mary Barra pointed out, there was some concern as far as adopting GM EVs because of a lack of robust charging infrastructure, and this has solved that. Well, it looks like it's time to wrap up this session. The next show is going to be Tuesday next week. We're at 10 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. Both Tuesdays and Thursdays are the general EV show.
Well, we have our podcast tomorrow, and we have our AI podcast Sunday.
Right. The podcast tomorrow is for Gruber Power Services, and it's the one of our sister divisions that services critical power equipment all over the United States. And typically facilities managers, IT managers, anyone in charge of a computer infrastructure in their facilities would be interested in this particular podcast. And then Sunday, like Jesse pointed out, at 10 a.m. in the morning, we have started an artificial intelligence podcast. And it's a combination of news items, philosophizing, entertaining questions, and trying to take the edge off of what appears to be a fairly threatening and scary new technology headed our way, because there's a lot of news about that constantly.
Yep, and one other thing, we have a TikTok from Jason DeFoss says, "Hello, Pete, watching from Canada."
Oh, thank you for joining us. And then, of course, Wednesdays, each Wednesday we have the Tesla Roadster podcast, and that's for Roadster owners or for people interested in Roadsters. And we'll occasionally entertain a non-Roadster question during that podcast as well. Again, thank you for joining us. Next week, Mark will be back, and I will not be solo anymore. And in 2 weeks after that, I will be in Europe, so Mark will be solo, so you can give him all your questions then. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate you all. We'll see you next time.